I am approaching my halfway point as in my 3-year assignment here at St. Thomas Aquinas. So I'm starting to kind of reflect on how quickly everything is going. It's kind of crazy. And also realizing that the bar has been set not only just in the music and the liturgy, but just in the community that I've received here for the rest of the next 60 years of my life, which will probably not meet that bar. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. It has been wonderful, and I was thinking to myself, what do I do? I preach every day. What am I talking about for these people? What are they stuck hearing week after week or day after day? And it's usually one of 3 homilies that you get. An incomprehensible homily about the Trinity, which all of you know, yeah, we get those regularly. And then something about meaning, which is suffering, kind of comprehensible, kind of profound. And then something about the outdoors, which we all usually like because, hey, that's great, we live in Boulder, Colorado, right? Well, today you're going to get none of those. And in fact, not only are you going to get none of those, you're going to get a topic that you really don't want to hear about. And after getting chewed out from the last 2 masses and getting angry letters from last week, I was like, wow, politics. People feel really strongly about this topic. And a lot of them don't want to hear this from the pulpit at all. But you're going to. So we begin with a rather painful and difficult topic. But I say this, and I'm engaging the question of politics today, not just because the election's on Tuesday, not just because I want to be controversial or just a jerk, whatever. It's actually because of a very sad experience I had last week talking to a girl who's an undergraduate student at Georgetown University Catholic School, who said, you know, Father John, she said, at one point in my life, I knew all the teachings of the church, and I believed them. And she said, but when I got to college, I didn't know how to think as a Catholic, and everything was just stripped away. And I completely lost my faith because I didn't know how to think as a Catholic. And so what I'm about to say is going to be very painful for some people, and it's going to be very difficult. And I've had people walk out and chew me out, and that's all fine, whatever you need to do. I give you permission to do that. But what's at stake for me is that one college student who's sitting in this church right now, who's never heard this, that there is a way to think as a Catholic, and that you can be reasonable and profound and rational in engaging the political world. So, with that in mind, we move to our topic, Catholics and politics. As I've been thinking about this, I think there's basically 4 approaches you can have to politics as a Catholic. I've narrowed it down to 4. If you have other ones, let me know. Number 1, just have nothing to do with politics whatsoever. Live in a cave, completely oblivious to anything that's going on, no idea of issues, anything whatsoever, which is tempting at times. We have to understand that, but it's not unacceptable. Now, another form of that is to say that it should have nothing to do with this place, right? What is Father John doing, preaching about politics in the pulpit? Who does he think he is, right? This is what Father Peter and I hear regularly. Stay to your piety and keep out of politics. Okay, that's possible, except for 2 guys, Jesus and Aristotle. If we believe them, then we have to be engaged in politics, and let me tell you why. Number 1, Jesus Christ said that Christianity, as essentially demonstrated, is about humanity. Right? Christianity is not just about moral teachings to help us love each other more. It's about humanity. It's about becoming more fully alive, becoming more fully human. And this guy named Aristotle said that a human being is essentially a political animal. So if Christianity is about humanity, and humanity is political, then Christianity has to be political. I hate to say that. That reasoning's pretty tight, though. So we got to be engaged in politics if we believe what Aristotle and Jesus tell us. So the first option, complete apathy, complete ignorance, not a good option. The common good matters. We have to be engaged with these things. We have to work together to build a just and peaceful society. I think we all know that. So the first option, not so good. Second option, wait for me to tell you who to vote for and which political party to be a part of from the pulpit. Not a good option, okay? Most of you have already, some of you have already voted. Most of you know who you're going to vote for. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I don't care who you vote for. Frankly, that's between you and our Lord. But that doesn't mean to say that we're not going to talk about and engage politics in some form from this pulpit. What's important for you to hear, first off, is that the Catholic Church is not wedded to a political party, nor is she wedded to a political person. And so it would be completely unjust for me to expect complete, blind, irrational obedience from you and to say, this is who you're to vote for, now go on Tuesday, there's your marching orders. This was the mentality a long time ago, 50, 60 years ago. My grandmother kind of thinks like this when we talk about issues, both good and bad. You just wait for the church to tell you what to do and then go do it. Blind obedience. But the problem with that is, first off, you're rational creatures, and we should expect a rational engagement of your faith. Second, that reduces the Catholic Church to a political party. That's a problem. I'm the spokesperson, and I tricked you into coming to our little political rally here on Sunday morning. We didn't see it coming, right? And we really think if the Catholic Church is a human institution, then she's just merely a political institution. And many of us, in our hearts, have that suspicion that the Catholic Church is going to tell us who to vote for because the Catholic Church is not divinely instituted. It's a human institution, and thus it's only a political party. So Catholic Church as a political party on your ballot, not an option. So that's 2 struck down. We still have 2 options. And this is where it's going to get a little dicier. First option, again, was apathy, political apathy, not an option. Second option, blind obedience to the authority of the church, not an option. So let's get into it. And this is where you want to start writing those love letters I'm going to get this week. Or start formulating that one-liner you're going to give me after Mass. That's all right. Here we go. Third approach to politics, which is very common. I think probably the most common, but I don't know if it's the best. This was proposed by an old bishop of Chicago. His name was Cardinal Bernardine, who was a very good man and who suffered with cancer, but was just in some ways a very holy man. But I don't think he had it right in this formulation. But I think we've imbibed this. This is to say, you're Catholic, you need to be informed on issues. And you need to understand that all issues are equal. What Cardinal Bernardine referred to it as was the seamless garment. It's like this white alb, one complete garment. And we have to understand that all the issues are one. And we have to kind of see them in their equality. Now, you're saying, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is this. My friend Miguel, who lives in Aurora, who's Hispanic, is going to be focused on immigration. Because his family is trying, to come across the border. And they're trying to have dignity and respect. So he's going to vote based on that. But my friend Dave up in Fort Collins is going to vote, he's very hardcore into the pro-life movement, so he's going to vote on the abortion issue. My friend who's unemployed in Lakeville is going to vote for a stimulus to the economy because he doesn't have a job, right? So what happens is if all issues are equal, then all that matters is what's important to me. But if we start with what's important to me and build a society based on that, we are doomed to destruction. That is relativism. And relativism runs rampant in our culture. In fact, Pope Benedict calls it a dictatorship. Dictatorship of relativism. How dare you tell me what to do? Well, maybe what you're doing isn't the best thing for you or the best thing for our society. There has to be another way. Relativism doesn't work. Because what relativism does is it says, these are the issues for me. So I'm going to work to get you or you to be convinced about what issues are important to me. And then political parties take that up and they build their platforms based on that. But it's not rooted in truth. It's rooted in opinion, and it's rooted in preference. So the thought of all of us going out to the ballots on Tuesday and voting based on what matters to us is not effective in building a just society. And we will never have unity as Catholics in regards to that, never, if we base solely on the opinions that we have on issues. There has to be another way. There has to be a more deep way of being informed and voting as a Catholic. Let's go through our 3 options that I just struck down. You're like, great, Father John, give us the 4th, because that's what you're going to tell us to do. First option, not an option, apathy. Second option, blind obedience to authority, not an option. Third, equivocating all issues as equal and voting based on what matters to me, not an option because of that relativistic principle. This is where it gets dicey. Here we go. Fourth possible way to be a Catholic and engage the political realm is to vote not based on issues, the third way, but vote based on principles. Principles. This is what's missing in the political sphere. No one is talking about principles, which comes from, of course, the Latin word principium, the foundation, the beginning. This is the very essence of reality. This is the very essence of a just society. We all want to build a happy place for our children and the next generation to come. But what we say with principles is that there are timeless, objective truths that we can know philosophically that inform every just society. There are certain principles, foundations, that have to be guarded in order to build a society. And we have to use those principles to apply them to the issues. So what I'm proposing for this fourth way is not based on just my preference or opinion on issues, but saying what are the principles as a Catholic that I hold, and then how do I apply them to the issues? It's a very different way of thinking. No one is thinking like this, but it's essential. We've got to recover principles. Otherwise, it's just going to be this political battle, and we're going to destroy ourselves. In the first century, there was a man named Diogenes, and he said that Catholics are the conscience of the world. And he said that because the principles that can be elucidated philosophically, which we know from the Greeks, from Plato, from Aristotle, are perfected by Christ and given to the church, and she holds them, and she moves them through history, and she continues to proclaim the principles. When in the church she has aligned herself with political parties, when she's taken on temporal herself, the church has gotten in a lot of trouble, and we know that, and we don't want that to happen again. But her one task in terms of the political sphere is to proclaim the timeless truths and the timeless principles that inform a just society. Without them, we are completely annihilating ourselves, and we will never build a just society. It has to be rooted in principles. Now, if all of you have till about 2:30 this afternoon, I'm happy to lay out all of the Catholic principles that affect the ridiculous number of issues that we're dealing with, that you've already voted for or will vote for on Tuesday. But I don't think we want that. So I got to kind of trim it down and move through this very quickly and hopefully very articulately. I'm hoping to be as reasonable as possible up here. But when I look at the whole sphere of issues, and when I try and apply the principles of the Catholic Church, right, as Catholics, applying these principles to those issues, I see that a lot of the issues, there's a remoteness from the principles. So like with immigration, we need to have reform, but there's a number of principles at play that play into that. The country has a right to protect their borders, but also every person has inalienable rights. So there's flexibility on the issue of immigration, on how that should be applied from the principles. Make sense? I think immigration is an example of that. Economy, foreign policy. There's a number of different principles that apply to an issue that give it a little more flexibility. And we got to really think creatively about what's the best option on that. And then there are other issues. There are other issues that are on the ballot right now, that are in our culture right now, that are so foundational to the building or to the destruction of our society, that to vote against is to surrender the principle. Let me say that again, because I know this is kind of weird language. But a lot of issues you can apply principles to, but because they're remote, there's some flexibility on what that looks like, how we vote on that. There are some issues that are so foundational, so essential to the upkeep of the American society and to a healthy, just culture, that to vote otherwise is to surrender the principles. And again, here's where get your pencils out. This is where it's going to get crazy. In my opinion, the three issues that are absolutely informed by principles and are non-negotiable, so to speak, are these: life, liberty, and marriage. Life, liberty, and marriage. These are the three issues that we're dealing with as Catholics that are non-negotiable, in the sense that if you vote one way, you literally surrender the principle. Now, you want to surrender the principles, fine, but we can't call ourselves Catholics and not hold to the principles the Catholic Church proposes. It's too contradictory. We simply cannot be saying, yes, we're killing 4,000 children a day. Yes, that's a problem, but I'm going to vote pro-choice, pro-abortion. We can't say that. We can't say that the fundamental inalienable right of a human person is the right to life. That's the foundation of everything. We can't say that and then vote pro-abortion. It's simply, we're living as contradictions. We're living as contradictions. We have to set aside politicians we like, political parties, even issues that we feel more passionately about, and say, is this the foundation of everything, or is it not? Do we want a society that's founded on the right to life, or do we not? That's the question. But be careful, because to vote pro-choice is to be a contradiction as a Catholic. And you'll be unintelligible in the church, and you'll be unintelligible outside of the church. That's our first issue. Number two, liberty. Religious liberty is at stake. It's very seriously at stake. It doesn't seem to be, because there's all this kind of language and media stuff around it. But when I study Soviet Poland and communism when it took place into Poland in the 1930s, one of the first things that happened is the language of religious liberty shifted to the language of religious worship. And you're saying, Father John, why does that matter? What is this any difference whatsoever? And feel free to walk out if you need to. Why does this matter whatsoever? Religious worship means that we only have this option right here. We're free to come here for 1 hour on Sundays, and then we have nothing to do with it outside. We are losing this. We're being stripped of this. Don't be afraid. And if you need to step out, I understand. I give you the freedom to do that. But as a Catholic, I can't stand up here and say, if you're living as a contradiction, that's okay with me. I could never do that as a priest and go to bed and sleep well at night. Thirdly, and most difficultly, the issue of marriage. There is nothing more painful and more frustrating for people who struggle with same-sex marriage than the Catholic approach to marriage. This is the most difficult issue that we face. They feel condemned. They feel oppressed. They feel horribly, unjustly treated by us. And many of them are Catholic and they're afraid to come here. And we have to take that seriously. But the response to that cannot be to surrender the principle that marriage is the very foundation and the cell of our life. There is a miracle that happens when a man and a woman come together in the marital act. A child comes into existence. It's simply unbelievable. Maybe I'm just naive or celibate, but this is simply unbelievable, right? You're like, wow, Father, kind of finally had the sex talk or something like that. I just am kind of astonished by this. What marriage serves to protect and has always served to protect is that procreation and the union that happens between the man and the woman is so sacred and so beautiful that it cannot be rewritten. It's written into our nature. And to lie and to say we can change the definition of marriage, we can change what sex means, we can change our nature, it's a lie. And I think it's a cowardly way to try and call people on. It does not help. What we need is people of courage, people who will say, I am not afraid to love, and I'm not afraid to be convicted by principles. I know you're looking that way now. Come back to me here. We're almost done. I promise this will end very soon. This is a very difficult thing. This is a very painful thing. And I hope you know that in the last year and a half, and now I have a year and a half, some of you are hoping it'll be shorter, but I hope you know that I preach about the Trinity. I preach about suffering. I preach about the outdoors. But I'm also profoundly convinced that if we compromise ourselves in the political realm, you'll never be able to experience the Trinitarian life, the beauty of redemptive suffering, and truly encounter God in the outdoors. If I didn't think this is the absolute most important thing that is at stake right now, I would not be preaching about this. And if I wasn't convinced that God wanted this, I wouldn't be preaching about this. And I hope you know that. Father Peter and I are not just jerks. We don't want to run people out of the church, right? We don't exactly feel good about that. But we see lived contradiction. And I see men and women leaving the church because they don't know how to think as Catholics. We got to return to principles. We got to surrender all the political stuff. We got to surrender the political desires, preferences on issues. Return to principles and engage me. You got to chew me out, vent me out after this. I'm okay with that. But please engage on the level of principles and correct me if I'm wrong. But let's all get to the same level. Because, and this is the final thing, and then you get to go. Actually, you don't get to. You have 20 minutes, and then you get to go. But this is the final thing. Until Catholics are united on principles, we'll never be able to love. We will never be able to love. What the world needs is a witness of radical love for women who are struggling with the question of abortion, for Muslims, Jews, Mormons, whoever, whose religious liberty is being oppressed, and for men and women who struggle with same-sex attraction. What they need is courageous, heroic love, and we cannot witness to them together until we're united on the principles. Keep our principles, keep our humanity, and we keep Christ in our society.